Welcome to the Rodelcast, where we discuss issues related to public education and the workforce with guests from around the state and around the world. My name is Paul Herdman, and this podcast is part of a series in an OECD project called Career Pathways in a Rapidly Changing World. We are looking at the transition from senior secondary school or high school to whatever young people decide to do next. We're looking specifically at high school programs that build meaningful work-based learning experiences into general education courses to better prepare those students to make more informed choices. This story is about Canada. You'll hear from policymakers, educators, and students from 2 of this nation's 10 provinces and 3 territories, New Brunswick and British Columbia. In terms of governance of education, unlike the other 4 countries in this study, decisions about education are the sole jurisdiction of the provinces. Consistent with the Canadian Constitution, there is no federal role and therefore no federal Department of Education. We'll start on the West Coast with Angie Calleberg in the BC Ministry of Education.
I'm Angie Calleberg. I'm the Executive Director for Student Learning for British Columbia, and I have responsibility for K-12 provincial curriculum, assessments, national and international assessments, classroom assessment, reporting, learning resources, and French education. BC, I think what I shared the last time is that we have approximately 5 million people living here. It represents 204 distinct First Nations with 30 different First Nations languages spoken. There's also 38 Métis chartered communities, as well as Inuit people in British Columbia. We're officially, as part of Canada, a bilingual country. So BC has 2 official languages with English and French.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the shift in the definition of an educated citizen and the broader curricular changes that went with that. Angie, do you want to start us off there? Why make that shift?
So education transformation, it began for us approximately in 2011. It started at a point when BC was already listed and very much ranked as a high-performing jurisdiction internationally, and students in general, whether they were performing very well on provincial, national, and international measures. But it came from a place of understanding that while our kids were doing really well right now, there was this question about how well we were preparing them for a very unknown future, with an awareness around the rate of technological change and how we could help ensure that they were ready for a future that we couldn't even quite imagine what exactly it would include. So this began with a series of roundtables that engaged all layers and levels of our education sector, and they had affirmed the need at that point to be able to focus on the competencies and skills that students would need for the future. And it just so happened that at the same time that coincided very well with, I think, the real focus on competencies and the impacts of globalization that many jurisdictions and other education systems, as well as the OECD, were contemplating at the same time. So within the roundtables that I mentioned earlier, part of the first layer of dialogue that took place, it was focused on the educated citizen and this notion that came forward in BC approximately in 1988 under the mandate for the school system that affirmed the intellectual, social, emotional, and career goals that we held for students at that time. The roundtables brought them forward to our broader education sector, and through those dialogues, they in fact reaffirmed that those were the things that still remained as essential and of most importance to be able to focus on. There may have been some desire to update a word or some of the language here or there, but the concepts themselves remained very much unchanged. And that piece of the notion of the educated citizen, it did become the foundation for curriculum transformation. I think what I noted previously, though, was that what I think we would say today in 2024 is that this notion of an educated citizen, it does have more of a space, I think, that is including the concept of global citizenry and what that actually looks like in a world that is very much globalized, and for many jurisdictions like BC, dealing with high rates of immigration. So I like the notion of that educated citizen piece extending now into the space of a global citizen.
There isn't a lot of federal coordination, right? So in terms of like
No.
how you worked from province to province? Was there a lot of sharing, or is there a consistency around this kind of a shift, or do you feel like BC is somewhat unique in how it's approached it?
There are other provinces and territories that have also moved in this space of being competency development focused and moving into more of the less rote memorization, more into deeper thinking, complex skills, which directly related to BC are that the Yukon territory uses BC's curriculum and assessments. So very aligned there. Northwest Territories also has recently adopted BC's curriculum and assessment, so alignment there. But other larger provinces as well have also moved into this space of competency development. And what was pretty unique, I think, in 2011 is now quite well known and accepted in Canada today.
One of the many things I found fascinating about BC is that they stepped back and fundamentally rethought what it meant to be an educated citizen in the 21st century. Angie described the shift this way.
I think it ties into the emphasis that we placed on core competency development. And for BC, this looks like it's been contained in three categories: one focused on thinking, a second on communication, and a third on personal and social awareness and responsibility.
This transformation involved redesigning the curricula and assessments K through 12 to include three main pillars: intellectual development, social emotional learning, and career readiness. Career readiness is the newest and least developed of the three. Here's Angie describing the evolution of their thinking.
Career education was an area where we undertook a significant amount of change, and that taking them far beyond K to 12. And I think within that space, it really drew it back to, I think, the foundation laid by the core competencies, whereby you're not asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? You're asking them, who do you want to be in the world? And really challenging them to get a better understanding of themselves, of their goals, of their trajectories that they're setting for themselves, and what they want to be able to put out there into that space. And I think that piece in and of itself is huge, to be able to acknowledge in a technology driven kind of space where occupations that don't exist today may exist in 6 months, and that's our new norm, that it moves them into more of an understanding about, you're going to have a lot of different occupational kind of opportunities, but having a clear sense of who you are, what you're about, and what you'd like to be able to contribute within the world as one of those elements of occupation is really essential.
I spoke with several educators and administrators in BC about what career education looks like K through 12. Jim Lamond is the district principal in the Sooke district in Vancouver Island, where he leads their career education team. I asked about how he saw career education fitting into the province's definition of an educated citizen.
It's about the development of young people and a young population in three distinct pillars, which are really woven together. One being human and social development, intellectual development, where unfortunately, I think the majority of our efforts in education go to intellectual development, the curriculum. But the third pillar really, and that's the domain that the three of us really try and support in our work, is career development. And I think in speaking with ministry officials and in speaking with those who were helping guide the transition of curriculum in our province, it was really trying to focus on the development of a holistic person in what our communities feel is an educated citizen, to give them a great foundation into the pathways of the next phase of their life.
While many of the jurisdictions I have visited started career readiness around the middle grades, that's about ages 10 through 13, both BC and New Brunswick started their curricula in kindergarten. Bonnie Alexander is the Career Education Coordinator for the Victoria School District and has been a leader in working with students K through 8. She shared the importance of starting early.
In my view, practical career education being woven into the hands-on learning. The curriculum is a great platform for me to go in and teach teachers how to bring that curriculum to life. And I bring that up-to-date research because we know that kids start to make assumptions about their suitability to work as early as age 7. So all the programs and events that I run are meant to interrupt that trend, because we want students to learn about a lot more careers, a much broader range of careers, so they can make better transitions after high school.
Nicole Wallace is the district career education lead in the Sooke district with Jim, and she emphasized that her work with elementary students was less about what they want to be and more about helping them understand who they want to be.
I think it really speaks to and represents the growing recognition that schools are not just somewhere where we learn facts, and moving away from that kind of curriculum checklist where here are all the facts that we need to learn to memorize and remember, and really recognizing that schools are a place where children become part of their community and where we can help them discover their pathway and discover who they want to be.
Jim explained what career education looks like for students K through 12 with a particular focus on his older students.
The curriculum is divided into K to 9, and then in essence 10 through 12. And when students hit grade 8, grade 9, the career curriculum is woven in with the other subjects. When they hit the grad program in grade 10, it's mandatory for all students to take career life education in grade 9, 10, or 11. And then that scaffolds into career life connections, culminating with a capstone project or presentation in their grade 12 year, which is really encompassing their learning journey, or a passion project that demonstrates their journeys.
In those classes, students learn about personal finance and the range of skills they'll need to get started on their lives post-high school. They can also get academic credit for working.
Through the career education curriculum, work experience is also a component. And so there's a couple of different types of work experience for secondary school students. One of them is a simple 30-hour volunteer placement, or in essence, modeling opportunity. However, they could also take an elective course called Work Experience 12A or Work Experience 12B, which are 4-credit elective courses, providing students with credit for work they're already participating in. Through that work, we're also able to identify pathways of students. So we have a student working on a construction site and they're working around tradespeople. All of a sudden, we see the potential for what's called a hidden apprentice. And that's when we have conversations about further pathways for that student, ways to support them financially as they enter post-secondary.
For some students I spoke to, getting started in the trades was the goal. 2 young men I spoke with, TJ and Jack, participated in Task, a trades awareness program that involves a survey or sampler over 5 weeks of different trades, ranging from electrical to carpentry. They both chose carpentry, and now in grade 12, they are spending half their time in school and half their time on a work site. Finding this path was not a straight line.
I've always liked working with my hands, so anything to do with my hands I really was intrigued in. In grade 9, grade 10, I was still very unsure of what I was going to do. And I was getting myself into a lot of trouble. Then I had to help my parents with building a shed in the backyard, and I really liked that, so I decided to sign up for Task. And Task showed me a lot of different trades, like welding and electrical, plumbing, whatever it may be. And then I decided I wanted to be in the trades.
In terms of what Jack learned about himself in the last 2 years, he shared the following.
For me, I definitely am more like, you gotta show me. I'm a visual learner. You gotta show me a few times, then I'll get it. I'm not sit down in the classroom. It made me more independent, obviously. I learned I was way more independent. I can do a lot more stuff for myself than I realized.
Their teacher, Tanya Phillips, helped these young men connect to their work placements and to Camosun College. She saw this as not only career readiness, but life-changing.
Jack and TJ both have alluded to the fact that in their junior years, so grade 9 and 10, they were struggling. So being in class full days, sitting, being at the mercy of a bell ringing was a lot. We worked really hard at trying to keep them engaged. And then what happened when the opportunity came up for Task to take a semester outside of a class and do a trades awareness program where they could survey a number of trades and have a partnership with Camosun and be off the school site and actually see what a post-secondary institute looks like. and then actually head out onto a job site. And the first bit, as you mentioned, didn't go as well as it expected, but with self-advocacy, we were able to shift and get you into a placement, and that has changed the trajectory of your life. And it's also changed what school looks like for your grade 12 year, where we've been able to have you on half days to get the rest of your academics done and then transition into the trades. So I think having this opportunity was really a life-changing experience for both TJ and Jack. And I told you guys both this before, but I'm so proud of you both, and I'm really excited to watch what the future is going to hold for you.
This transition from secondary school to post-secondary life can be jarring. Here's Scott Biddle, Executive Director of Education Programs and Policy at the Ministry of Education and Childcare.
There's already been a career sampler sort of opportunity developed for trades, and now the teams are working on things like a care economy sampler, health type of career samplers, things that, and this is for potentially students in kind of early parts of secondary type of opportunity often, where they can start to dip their toes and get a sense of, oh, this is what it could be like, some shorter, smaller opportunities to interface with employers, and it might even be on a post-secondary campus in some ways. And then work experience following as they're going on and having more intensive sort of opportunities. And then dual credit, as you mentioned, being a great one where, working directly with the school district and the post-secondary to offer some post-secondary level courses that they can start to engage in. So the idea being that we don't want them ideally to wait until they're in grade 12 before it's like, okay, here you are on your way out. But they've had some years to work their way up and get some different experiences on the way through. And I think we're really trying to focus here in BC on really intentional, stronger relationships between our Ministry of Education and Childcare and the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills to look at what are we doing on both sides of the equation here? Because it's not just us helping the students out the door, but also on the post-secondary side, how are they welcoming them in? And one of the things we've heard a lot about is the social emotional piece too. That sometimes that piece can be really jarring if it's not done well. Going from one system to another that might be the hardest part of it, not the academic element, but the social shock of it all. And you see some students who've done, say, brilliantly in K to 12 dropping out in the first year of post-secondary. So it really does need that bridging between us to be more effective.
To bridge the gaps between high school, post-secondary education, and employers on the southern part of Vancouver Island, 5 districts have built a partnership with their regional community college, Camosun, called the South Island Partnership. I got a chance to speak with the executive director of that partnership, Nicola Priestley.
My name is Nicola Priestley, and I am a part of the South Island Partnership. I am lucky to currently be a part of a 6-person team. We have 3 CUPE staff, which are college employees. We have 2 transition coordinators, which are seconded from our local school districts to the college. And I am lucky to be in the director role, and I too am seconded from a local school district, Greater Victoria. And our partnership is a collaborative relationship between Camosun College and 5 South Island school districts. So Greater Victoria, Sooke, Saanich, Gulf Islands, and Cowichan.
I asked what benefit the districts see in working as a collaborative with the college versus independently.
I personally feel there's numerous benefits for our school districts to be working collaboratively with Camosun. If we explored the alternative maybe of one school district just working alone with a college, they would be responsible for much more, right? As a partnership, we're able to spread not only, say, expenses across multiple partners, but also seat availability. We're able to, through multiple districts, one district isn't responsible for, say, filling a full cohort of 24 seats, right? They'll be responsible for only filling 5, and everyone can find 5 students within a district that are keen to take a course, and there's a little bit more spread out responsibility and expectation, and from that, with everyone contributing into the partnership, there's much more access and opportunity for larger projects when everyone works together. And two, I think, just as an aside, the opportunity for our districts to come together and see each other and connect on like a monthly basis benefits our district and our school-based teams in so many ways, not only connected to dual credit and career exploration, but just the relationships that they've been able to form. They're constantly talking outside of SIP engagement. They're reaching out to each other and going, oh, what are you doing on this report? Or what's your process for this? And so that feeling of community and connection is pretty magical.
Nicole, the K-8 career education teacher, explained the value of the partnership as an educator.
When I started in this role last year, my first week in the role, Bonnie met me for lunch and we had a chat. And so just knowing that there is somebody who does the same job as me, who has the same passion as me, and wants to do the same kind of work in schools is only a phone call away, is just incredible, because it means that I feel supported and I know that I have somebody that I can ask questions of, that I can bounce ideas off of, and just even if I don't end up reaching out to Bonnie, just knowing that she's there and that I could is so beneficial for me in my work, and while I'm finding my way of supporting K-8 career education in my school district. We have a full team across the whole South Island. Like Jim said, there's 5 school districts, and we are always all there to answer questions and support each other and provide ideas and problem solving. And it's a really supportive environment to work in.
I got a chance to speak to some high school students taking courses at Camosun and engaging in work-based learning. For some, the different environment pushed them to own their learning more.
Probably most of the stuff I've learned here at Camosun is things that I would never get a chance to learn at high school. A lot of the things I feel like you're learning, I don't know, the basics of stuff, but it's never real life things you'll encounter. A few of them are, but so far, everything here has been new to me, which I quite enjoy. But I also find that having everything new, you learn the most about yourself because you're trying things you've never tried before, and you have to figure out what you like, and you have to be the person to do the stuff. I find in high school, they give it to you, you do it, they tell you how you did, and you move on.
Some found that internships that gave them a chance to rotate through different roles gave them a sense of how interdependent the component parts of a company were.
Everything in the system plays such a big role, even if you don't think that it does. I know frontline workers who are doing the type of work that I'm doing, sometimes they just don't see the importance of, let's say, filling out a budget sheet or following the protocols and the procedures. If they don't, then us in the office have to go back, file through, figure out what went wrong, the mistakes, the errors. So I feel like that's a really big lesson for me, is that something might seem so small and minuscule, not a big deal if you don't do it, but it is.
South Island Partnership also has a dedicated pathway for students facing significant barriers to learning called Pathways for Life, Learning, and Work. This 6-week program prepares young people for entry-level work. Here's Andrea from a video on the program.
Well, Pathways showed me a lot of new opportunities. I lived in East Sooke at the time, and I was still going to high school, but I didn't know I could go to college. I didn't know there was other stuff out there, like Pathways, that like supports people with disabilities, mostly students. But like it showed me the opportunity that I could become an adult, and it was a safe place to explore that, because like I had to learn to take buses from Sooke, and that was terrifying for me, but I did it. My mom and dad now call me the bus expert.
Some 3,000 miles or 4,800 kilometers east in New Brunswick, our team got a chance to learn about the Essential Skills Achievement Pathway, or ESAP. New Brunswick, while serving a diverse population, is home to about 800,000 people as opposed to the 5 million in BC. Here's Beth Henderson providing some context on this new approach. She is a learning specialist in a unit of the education ministry entitled Essential Skills and Universal Design for Learning.
The Essential Skills program is also implemented in the Francophone sector. And so that encompasses 22 high schools. And so when we're looking at numbers and thinking about 100,000, that would be both sectors.
Yeah.
Currently in the Anglophone sector, there would be about 75,000 learners. And so, of course, then we're looking at high school learners, which would be about a third of that amount. But when we're looking at the Essential Skills program, it would be probably 5% of learners within any high school.
Beth explained a bit more about how this approach was different from how high schools had worked for decades.
We've done high school on a 20 credit program, 20 credit hour program for 30 years. So 6 years ago, we started the Essential Skills program, which was a complete departure from the standard program, which was very stringent in what needed to be done and what was required. And so what Essential Skills allowed is that they could do skills-based learning, and then all of the other standard courses just became a menu for them of the courses that they would take that would align to their pathway, and then they would be able to be involved in experiential learning. So because within a couple of years, people started to see, oh, wow, like this is actually, we thought that this was going to be very difficult, and it's actually been the complete opposite.
From a student perspective, this flexibility has given young people a head start on their career journey. Here's Grant, and note that when he mentions binders, he's referring to the essential skills and outcomes associated with a given area of focus or subject area.
Like, what made you think about doing this path?
I haven't stayed interested in one thing for more than a couple months at a time.
Yeah.
Like when I started up and I got into my second binder, I was talking with a friend of mine who's also in the program. We're like, all right, well, let's try welding because it's both something that we wanted to try. And then I was doing that for a while. I was really enjoying it. And then I remember I was doing work on a buddy's car, and like I had no room to work underneath it. And I was driving home afterwards, and I was all stuffy and just full of all the gases and stuff you inhale. And I was like, I love welding. I love doing it as a hobby, but I don't want to do it as a career.
Yeah.
So then through work placements and whatnot, I tried to figure out some other area that I wanted to go into. So I tried some environmental sciences at RPC at UNB. I tried a little bit more welding, which I still love, but obviously don't want to go into full time. And then I did some research on forestry because my grandfather taught at the Maritime Forestry College.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured out that's what I want to go into. So I applied there, got accepted, and now I'm tailoring a lot of what I'm doing to try and pursue forestry.
Here's Candace on how ESAP has helped her figure out what's next.
So I just think Essential Skills is great because it's given me a lot more comfort in the sense that I know what I'm doing, I know where I'm going, I know the next step.
As is often the case, what works for students often works for educators. Here's Joel Everett, one of the first 4 teachers involved in New Brunswick's ESAP pilot in 2018. He's now a district-level lead working with other teachers.
You hit the nail on the head, Paul, saying that it's not necessarily the type of classroom that you're trained in when you're doing your certification in becoming a teacher. And that, especially as an early career teacher, taking over a totally new program for me, that was a bit of a hurdle to get over. And I was constantly during those early days trying to change back to how I was trained. And that wasn't what was beneficial for the students that were starting out in the program. And then once I started seeing some of the benefits blooming in that first batch of students that I had go through the program, it was like shackles being taken off. And the admin team at my school and the guidance team, and they started seeing the same things. This became this new emerging idea that we were just rolling with. And not every day was perfect, but once we started seeing some of those longer term benefits, for instance, students that had behavior problems in the past that all of a sudden weren't having as many behavior issues or attendance issues or whatever the case was, just general attitudes towards education in general, just students walking in the door every morning looking forward to doing projects and working with their peers in the program, as opposed to coming in and just getting through the day.
While the essential skills pathways are relatively new, serving about 2,500 students or 3 to 6% of students province-wide, New Brunswick is going through a renewal process in which it is reviewing its policies, and through that, Beth Henderson shared that they are in consideration for expansion across the province.
First, we had essential skills. That really allowed New Brunswick to recognize that we can do school differently, that students can graduate at different times throughout the year, etc., that we all don't have to be taking very stringent courses. We can personalize. So now New Brunswick is going through this thing called high school renewal, and it is really being built off the back of essential skills.
Wow.
Because everyone has recognized that it is successful to allow learners to consider what is their preferred future, what aligns to their skills, talents, and abilities, and have those courses do that. So in the renewal that we're launching this year, there's a lot of markers of essential skills that are throughout there. But so it's been very positive for us because of that.
While practitioners and students in both provinces reported challenges like difficulties with transportation to work placements and confusion on the part of parents as to how this new approach will impact their future options, Beth shared that they were working through the mind shift emblematic of what many policymakers, practitioners, and students are experiencing across both provinces as they work to help young people get ready for the start of their careers.
We're still in that change management phase of this. For much of the time in school, what we were looking at was, what are we going to do to get you graduated high school? And we have now moved to the methodology of what opportunities are going to be provided so that you are ready for what's next. And part of that will be that you will graduate from high school. But what we're really interested in is, yes, you graduating from high school, but preparatory work for the next phase of your life. And so that's been a huge mind shift.
Thank you for listening to this podcast on career pathways in Canada. This is the last in a series in partnership with the OECD and Rodel. This project also included Australia, Scotland, the US, and New Zealand. If you want to read the working paper and blogs or listen to more podcasts on this topic, please visit us at rodelde.org. A special thanks to Beth Henderson and Joel Everett in New Brunswick, as well as Angie Calleberg, Scott Biddle, Danny Tones, and Jackie Callahan in BC for helping our team coordinate visits and calls with educators and students throughout the two provinces. This episode was produced and edited by Alejandra Villamares and contains original music from Jesse Herdman. The larger project was done in cooperation with our team here at Rodel in Delaware and with the OECD team in Paris. None of this would have been possible without the generous support from the Carnegie Corporation of New York and the Rodel Foundation. Thank you. Until next time.